There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
When you sing, you fly. You move away from everything that is real. You are into something that's coming out of you, a note or a song or a note or a feeling, and you get totally wrapped into that, and with the motion of that and the dancing and the singing, it's like flying, because you're not thinking of eating or sleeping or dressing. The song and the singing totally takes you out.
So, yes, I feel like we should have a minute of silence for Tina Turner. This one's hit me really hard. Celebrity deaths usually leave me cold. Some apparently famous singer in Canada, Gordon Lightning or something. No, I'm being silly. His name's Gordon Lightfoot. I never liked his voice. I didn't have any visceral, emotional reaction to his passing. Apparently everybody loved him but me. I had a similar non-reaction when David Bowie died. I couldn't understand why people were upset. But Tina Turner, like Betty White, that's maybe the only other celebrity whose death really hit me. She was just really the greatest human being alive in my lifetime. I can't think of anybody, with the exception of Nelson Mandela, who had more of a positive impact on the world. I just adored her. I don't have anything profound to say. I wanted to start with that quote, because it was profound, from an interview with Oprah. It was from the Tina Turner memorial episode of a new Canadian arts radio show called Commotion, which I listen to occasionally on podcast. Put a link to that episode. Anyway, Tina Turner. I'm not going to say she was simply the best, because that's too corny and everybody else in the world has said it, but it is true, and she really changed the world with her more from her own life story and her courage. I think she did more for women than maybe anybody alive in my lifetime. She was just I adored her. All right, so hello, here is my new blouse. It finally came and I love it. It's so fabulous. Look at that. My favorite color is green, and it's got flowers. Yeah, I think this is my new favorite, and it fits perfectly. Came from China, and it got here in less than a month, so I was pleased with that. Otherwise, I also want to give a shout out to my mom, because Sunday, May 28th, is her 80th birthday. Can you believe she's 80? If you've seen her on any of my videos, she seems more like a very young 60. She just makes me tired. She keeps so busy, and she's so with it. So happy birthday, Mom. I think there's going to be a special 80th birthday video we're going to make together, so stay tuned for that if it ever comes to fruition. I'm going out to the farm with the family on the weekend to celebrate, so yay. And I also wanted to shout out Kevvie of Say Kevvie. If you don't know her channel, she's wonderful. Kevvie was one of the co-founders of Trans Girl April, which was an amazing readathon that I participated in this year, and Kevvie's having some trouble. The place where she lives is not safe, and Kevvie needs help to raise the funds to move out and be safe. I have made a donation. I would have loved to have given 10 times more, but I just don't have that kind of cash right now. But maybe you can help out too, and there will be a link in the show notes to that GoFundMe webpage. Best of luck, Kevvie. You will be in my thoughts.
And I almost forgot. Here is the week in review. One of the things that's the most delightful is Jean, as this wacky artist. She creates what she calls her metal sculptures. She calls them manglements. Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac, and I am gay. So very, very gay. And Pride Month is coming up very soon. Next is a total cover by. I just love this painting on the cover. Nobody, Somebody, Anybody, a novel by Kelly McClory. Let's see what Lindy wrote. Why isn't Patrabenko more widely known? This one sings. Well, what else do I need to know?
I actually can't think of a good adjective to describe my reading week. I think it's been good. I've been, Yeah, it's been a little bit mixed, but I don't have an overall impression. I will probably have a much better impression of what my reading week was like by the time I record this video. I have 2 bales, and I finished 3, and I think I started 2. I bailed on this, whatever this was, short story collection, Tainna, by an Inuit writer, Norma Dunning, and I was buddy reading this with Kate, and neither of us really, I think I bailed after partway through the 3rd story. It won the Governor Reynolds Award, and I don't understand why. I thought it was awful because the writing was bad, and the stories were not very well crafted. And I'm also not the target audience, so, take everything I'm saying with a shaker of salt. But I thought these were some of the worst, poorest quality short stories I've tried to read in a long time. The way she tried to mix Inuit spirituality and myths with modern characters was just an abysmal failure. As far as I was concerned, it was just terrible, just really, really bad. And Curtis of Curtis Books and Books and I have come to a decision that didn't cause either of us very much emotional stress or pain to bail on this biography of Ronald Firbank, Prancing Novelist by Brigid, Brophy. I think he was enjoying it a bit more than I was. I got almost halfway through it. I think I had 30 pages left to get to the halfway point at which Curtis and I were going to discuss it. But then life got in the way for Curtis in a positive way that I will let it's his story to tell, but it's very positive. So I'm sure he will be making a video about that sometime soon. Hint, hint, Curtis. So then there was a delay, and we both thought, you know what, let's just leave it. This was my first anything by Brigid Brophy, and I think it might be my last. She's not a very good writer, and she's so psychoanalytic in her literary criticism and her approach to telling Ronald Firbank's life story. Ronald Firbank's life story was surprisingly uninteresting to me because I'm a literary snob, and I'm as gay can get. But his fiction doesn't interest me, and his short life was kind of silly too. So I'll be getting rid of this one. On to more positive stuff. I finished 3 books. The first one is my reread of Barbara Pym's Crampton Hodnet, which was, as it was the first time around, a 5-star read. It's one of my favorite Pyms, and she wrote this in the 1940s, but it was only published posthumously. There's no particular story. I mean, she had it finished by about 1940, and then she got involved in the Wrens during the war, and I think she herself thought it was more of an apprentice type of novel, but others disagreed, and I certainly disagree. I think it's one of her finest novels, and it's hilarious, and I already have a full review from the first time around. I'll put a link to that. I read this one aloud to my top-tier patron, Melanie, and we had a really great time. It was a reread or a re-listen for her, and we had a great time talking about all the things about it, and it's just pee-your-pants funny, and also, like all of her stuff, there are more serious insights into what it's like to be a single woman or any other kind of woman, and how stupid men are. So it's, pitch perfect. What else do you need? I have finally finished Battle Songs by Daša Drndić, translated from the Croatian by Celia Hawkesworth. Now, this was also published under its original title, which is in Italian, Canzone de Guerra, I think it is. But for some reason, there's 2 editions in English. One has the original Italian language title. Drndić did not write in Italian, but it's a famous Italian phrase, and it basically has the same meaning as Battle Songs. And this was a 5-star read for me. I think as early as tonight, Dan, formerly of the Weird Book Club, and I are going to film our Zoom discussion, and that will come. I'm not going to promise it soon, but it'll come in the coming weeks or months. And I was the slowpoke with this one because once I started reading it, it was really dense and I couldn't get my bearings, and it took almost half the book before I kind of had a sense of what was going on, and then I sailed through it. I don't mean I read it fast, but that it was no longer difficult and just a thoroughly enjoyable, very serious book like only Daša Drndić can do. Dan and I had a preliminary chat about the chat we're going to do officially the other day, and he said that he felt sad that she's gone. She died, I think, in 2018, something like that. Age 71, that there weren't going to be any more books. And I said, well, but the good news is I found out in the little bit of research I'd done to prepare for the chat is that only about half of her books have been translated into English, so there's still quite a bit left to come. Oh, and this is also paints Canada in a realistic light. Daša Drndić herself came as a refugee, and boy, she lets Canada have it. Canada is such a racist for its whole history, right up to the present. It's just got the most undeserved reputation on the planet. The stuff I learned about Canada in this book, holy smokes. We have done a lot of evil in the world. And finally, late last night, I finished, I'll just hold the library book up for a minute, Edna O'Brien's 5th novel, Casualties of Peace, published in 1966. And it wasn't great. It was a 4-star read. I guess I gave the last one 4 stars too, but this was probably more of a 3.5 rounded up. But it was so beautifully written that I really couldn't give it less than 4 stars, but it was a little bit of a dog's breakfast. And so it makes sense to me that it's one of the few, if not the only, Edna O'Brien book that's not currently in print. I still think people that love her should read it. One of the central characters gets murdered, and that was a little bit too of a genre plot twist for my tastes. It's quite a serious look at violence against women, and this was a buddy read with Sonia of an enthusiastic reader, and she had a paperback copy that she bought, published in the 80s, and the stuff that people said about it, the way they praised it, and nobody mentioned violence against women as being the central aspect of the story. God, I guess we've come a long way with that in only a few short years, that people were blaming the victim in the way they praised the novel, and I can't remember the other cover blurb. It kind of gave a little summary of the themes, and it didn't mention spousal abuse and violence towards women and, killing women, and then none of that came up in the little summary of the plot. I'm like, Jesus. Anyway, all that's in there. I wasn't sure if it was as well structured as her other novels that I've read, but it held my interest from start to finish, and there was an egalitarian relationship between the two female characters. They were so equal in their friendship that it took me far longer than it should have to realize that one was the employer and the other was the housemaid. But anyway, a little bit of a mixed bag. Glad I read it. Her next novel, in chronological order, which is how Sonia and I are doing her books. We're going to buddy read it in August. I don't remember the title, but I have it, and it's a very Irish story, so I think I like her Irish stuff the best. And Casualties of Peace was set in London. I have started 2 books. This one, I've only read the first, chapter, but just the first section, and maybe the first chapter, With or Without Angels by Douglas Bruton. And I'm going to love it, I'm sure. But I didn't read very much because I realized that I didn't need to start it so early, because Lindy and I are doing a buddy read.
Actually, it's not a conventional buddy read. It's what I call a pseudo buddy read. We're going to have the book finished, and we're going to chat, probably on Zoom, about the book, not having discussed it on a chapter-by-chapter basis.
I think sometime in mid-June, and in order to pace myself so that I don't have it finished way in advance of that, I thought, okay, this week I'm only reading the first chapter. But I can now tell you more about what this book is all about. It is a novel that's based on a true story, and this true story is about the artist Alan Smith, who I don't know anything about him. In the last weeks or months or whatever of his life, when he was very frail, he got an idea for one last art project. I think he was a painter, but didn't have the physical ability to, he could no longer paint, but he came up with a photographic project. And the genesis, the spark of that idea for what he could do with photographs took him back to being a very young man in Italy and seeing this famous painting for the first time, which is called Il Mondo Nuovo, and it's on the screen right now, and that artist is Giandomenico Tiepolo. As you can see, all the people in the picture, they have their backs to the picture. You can see their backs, and what are they looking at? And there's a whole chapter, the introduction or whatever, not introduction, but the first chapter is all about the painting, and then the second chapter we get into Alan Smith as a very frail man going to the art gallery. I think it's I don't remember the name of it, but in London with his wife, and starting to take pictures. He inadvertently captures a photograph of his wife that reminds him of one of the poses of these many, many people in the painting, and then the novel begins. So the exhibit of photographs that he made at the end of his life, that's a true thing, and those photos are in this book. The photo he took of himself in a mirror, and that's his wife beside him, they are all in the book. And then Douglas Bruton has fictionalized it as a work that couldn't be more ekphrastic. Ekphrasis is, as I've only recently learned, and is my new favorite word, ekphrasis is a type of writing. It doesn't have to be writing, actually, but it's when you represent one artistic medium, one work in an artistic medium, using a different artistic medium. That is not very well explained, but in this case, it's writing about art. But it could be music about a novel. It could be a piece of music that's composed, inspired by a novel. That would also be ekphrasis, but mostly it's writing about art. And this is a work of ekphrasis, which is something that Lindy and I are very interested in. And so far, this has grabbed hold of me, and I'm chomping at the bit to get to chapter 2. And I've gotten a bare start on this memoir by the Japanese-Canadian writer Sally Ito, The Emperor's Orphans. It's starting out really good. I don't think I've read very much more than I read in the vlog where I sampled the first 10 pages, but I might have read another 5. And it's holding my interest, but there's nothing really I can say about it because I didn't give it too much attention this week. Looking forward to continuing. All right, so I can't remember if I said anything about this last Friday, but I know I said something to Lindy, and she was shocked that I am not planning to start. Well, I was going to say I'm not planning to start anything in the coming week, but that's not quite true. I'm going to start a short 2-hour audiobook because I'm getting close to the end of the audiobook, the Anthony Vesna short story collection. I'll finish that up probably this weekend, and then I'm going to start another audiobook. And I'll tell you about the new audiobook in a minute, but I've decided that no, this next week of reading is going to be to finish up as many books as I can without rushing. John Bookmaniac does not rush to finish anything, to clear as big a space as possible for my ambitious Pride Month TBR, which was posted last night. So that's what I'm going to be doing, but this audiobook will fit in nicely in and around the edges. I just featured a bite-sized book chat about this novel with Joseph from Calgary and of the fabulous book blog Rough Ghosts in the latest episode that went up last week. Eastbound by Maylis de Kerangal, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, translated from the French by Jessica Moore, and the audio book is narrated by Jennifer Pickens. I was surprised. It's one of the only archipelago books that I've ever found that was made into an audiobook. I hope that trend continues. And it's about a French woman and a Russian soldier on a train ride together in Siberia, and the connection that they make, which is not an erotic or romantic connection, but a much deeper connection than all that might have been. I'll put a link to Joseph's and my bite-sized chat about it, and I'm looking forward to checking it out on audio. So that's all I got. This is a quick and dirty Friday Reads, which suits me just fine. I'm sure I'm going to have a ton of stuff to tell you about next week, and here's one last look at this lovely, lovely blouse. Thanks for watching.